Book of Heaven, Volume 20, Part 6. October 26, 1926. How in all the acts that Jesus did, his purpose was the kingdom of the divine Fiat. Adam feels the honor he had lost being returned to him. As I continued to unite myself with the acts that Jesus did in redemption, my always lovable Jesus told me, "My daughter, see how all the acts I did in redeeming man, and even the miracles I performed during my public life, had no other purpose but to call back the kingdom of the supreme Fiat into the midst of creatures. And in the act of doing them, I asked my celestial Father to make it known and to restore it in the midst of the human generations. If I gave sight to the blind, my first act was to put to flight the darkness of the human will, the primary cause of the blindness of the soul and of the body, so that the light of my will might illuminate the souls of many blind, and they might obtain the sight to look at my will in order to love it, and their bodies also might be exempt from losing the sight. If I gave hearing to the deaf, first I asked my Father that they might acquire the hearing to hear the voices, the knowledges, the prodigies of my divine will, so that it might enter into their hearts as the way in order to dominate them, and there might be no more death in the world, either in the soul or in the body. Also in the dead I resurrected, I asked that souls might rise again in my eternal will, even those that were putrefied and made more than cadavers by the human will. And when I took the ropes to drive the profaners out of the temple, it was the human will that I was driving out, so that mine might enter, reigning and dominating, and they might be truly rich in their souls, and no longer subject to natural poverty. And even when, triumphant, I entered into Jerusalem, in the midst of the triumph of the crowds, surrounded with honor and glory, it was the triumph of my will that I established in the midst of the peoples. There was no act I did while being on earth in which I did not place my will as prime act to be established once again in the midst of creatures, because that was the thing I most cared for. If it were not so, or if I did not do so, if in everything I worked and suffered, I did not have the kingdom of the supreme Fiat as prime act to be restored in the midst of creatures, my coming upon earth would have brought a half good to the generations, not a complete one. And the glory of my celestial Father would not have been completely reintegrated by me. In fact, since my will is the origin of every good and the only purpose of creation and redemption, it is, therefore, the ultimate fulfillment of all our works. Without it, our most beautiful works remain within a frame and without completion, because it alone is the crown of our works and the seal that our work is complete. Therefore, for the honor and glory of the very work of redemption, it was to have, as prime act, the purpose of the kingdom of my will. After this, I was beginning making my round in the divine will, and going into the terrestrial Eden, in which Adam had done the first act of withdrawal of his will from the divine, I said to my sweet Jesus, "My love, I want to annihilate my will in yours, that it may never have life, so that your will may have life in everything and forever, in order to repair for the first act that Adam did, and return to your supreme volition all the glory as if Adam had never withdrawn from it. Oh, how I wish to give back to him the honor he lost because he did his own will and rejected yours. And I intend to do this act for as many times as all creatures have done their own will, the cause of all evils, and have rejected yours, the origin and font of all goods. Therefore, I pray you that the kingdom of the supreme Fiat may come soon, so that everyone, from Adam up to all the creatures who have done their own will, may receive the honor and the glory that they lost, and your will may receive triumph, glory, and its fulfillment." Now, while I was saying this, my highest good, Jesus, was moved and touched, and making my first father Adam present to me, let him himself tell me, with emphasis of love all special, "Blessed daughter, finally my Lord God, after so many centuries, has delivered to the light of the day the one who was to think about giving me back the honor and the glory that I lost, alas, by doing my will. How I feel my happiness redoubled! Until now no one has ever thought of giving me back that honor that I lost. Therefore I thank God profoundly for having delivered you to the light, and I thank you, the daughter dearest to me, for taking on the commitment of giving back to God the glory as if his will had never been offended by me, and to me the great honor that the kingdom of the supreme Fiat be established once again in the midst of the human generations. It is right that I give you the place that had been destined to me, as the first creature that came out of the hands of our Creator." After this, my lovable Jesus, clasping me to himself, told me, "My daughter, not only Adam, but the whole of heaven awaits your acts in my will, in order to receive the honor that their human will has taken away from them. You must know that I have placed more grace in you than I placed in Adam, so that my will might possess you and dominate you with triumph, and yours might feel honored never to have life, and to give the place to my will. In him I did not place my humanity as his help and strength, and as cortege of my will, because I did not have it then. But I have placed it in you, to provide you with all the necessary helps, so that your will might remain at its place, and mine might reign, and together with you might follow your making your rounds in my eternal volition, in order to establish its kingdom." On hearing this, surprised, I said, "My Jesus, what are you saying? It seems to me that you want to tempt me and make fun of me. How is it possible that you have placed more grace in me than in Adam?" "Certainly, certainly, my daughter. I had to make it so that your will might be sustained by another divine humanity, so that it would not stagger, but remain firm in my will. Therefore, I am not making fun of you, but I am telling you this, so that you correspond to me and be attentive. October 29th, 1926. How in all created things God centralized his love toward man. Outpouring of love in creating him, and how the Fiat made him live in the reflections of his Creator. I was continuing to make my round in all creation, in order to follow each act of the Supreme Will in each created thing, and my always lovable Jesus came out from within my interior to accompany me through the whole space of the vault of the heavens. And as we reached each created thing, Jesus gave starts of joy and of love. Then pausing, he told me, "My daughter, I created the heavens, and I centralized my love for man in the heavens. And in order to give him greater delight, I studded them with stars. I did not love the heavens, but man in the heavens, and for him I created them. How strong and great was my love in extending this azure vault above the head of man, adorned with most refulgent stars, like a pavilion for him, such that neither kings nor emperors can have one like it. But I did not content myself with centralizing my love for man in the heavens that were to serve him as pure delight. Wanting to delight in love with him, I wanted to create the sun, centralizing so much love for man in the sun. I loved man in the sun, not the sun, and therefore I placed in it love of necessity, because the sun was necessary for the earth, having to serve the plants and the well-being of man. Love of light, that was to illuminate him. Love of fire, that was to warm him. And all the effects that this sphere produces, that are innumerable. A continuous miracle placed in the vault of the heavens, that descends with its light for the good of all. I centralized so many specialties of love toward man in the sun, for as many goods and effects as it produces. Oh, if the creature at least paid attention to my love that the sun brings to her, how happy I would feel, and repaid of the great love I placed in this divine relator of mine, and bearer of my love and of my light. While my supreme will operated, constituting itself life of each created thing, in order to give itself as life to the human generations, also through them, my love, making its way in my eternal Fiat, centralized itself to love man. So in each created thing, in the wind, in the sea, in the little flower, in the little bird that sings, in everything, I centralized my love, so that all things might bring him love. But in order to hear, comprehend, and receive this, my language of love, man was supposed to love me. Otherwise, all creation would remain as though mute and lifeless for him. Now, after I created everything, I formed the nature of man with my own creative hands. And as I formed the bones, extended the nerves, formed the heart, so did I centralize my love. And after I clothed him with flesh, forming as though the most beautiful statue that no other artisan could ever make. I looked at him, and I loved him so much that, unable to contain my love, it overflowed. And breathing on him, I infused life in him. But we were not content. In an excess of love, the sacrosanct Trinity wanted to endow him, giving him intellect, memory, and will. And according to his capacity of creature, we enriched him with all the particles of our divine being. The whole of the divinity was intent on loving man and on pouring itself into him. From the very first instant of his life, he felt all the strength of our love, and from the depth of his heart, he expressed, with his own voice, love for his Creator. Oh, how happy we felt in hearing our work, the statue made by us, speaking, loving us, and with perfect love. It was the reflection of our love that came out of him. This love had not been contaminated by his will, and therefore his love was perfect, because he possessed the fullness of our love. Until then, of all the things created by us, not one thing had said to us that it loved us. Now, in hearing that man loved us, our joy, our contentment, was so great that as the fulfillment of our feast, we constituted him king of all the universe, and the most beautiful jewel of our creative hands. How beautiful man was in the first times of his creation! He was our reflection, and these reflections gave him so much beauty as to enrapture our love and render him perfect in all of his acts. Perfect was the glory he gave to his Creator, perfect his adoration, his love, his works. His voice was so harmonious as to resound in the whole creation, because he possessed the divine harmony, and the harmony of that Fiat that had given him life. Everything was order in him, because our will brought him the order of his Creator. It rendered him happy, and made him grow in our likeness, and according to our words, let us make man in our image and likeness. Each one of his acts, done in the unity of the light of the supreme Fiat, was a tint of divine beauty that he acquired. Each word of his was one more harmonious note that resounded. Everything was love in him. In everything he sang the praises of our glory, of our power, and infinite wisdom. And everything, heavens, sun, and earth, brought him the joys, the happiness, and the love of He who had created him. If you could form a statue the way you liked the best, and then you poured all of yourself into it, giving it all the vital humors, and with the empire of your love you gave life to it, how much would you not love it? And how much would you not want it to love you? What would your jealousy of love be, so that the whole of it would remain at your disposal, and such that you would not tolerate even one heartbeat that would not be done for you? Ah, in your statue you would look at yourself, and therefore at every little thing not done for you, you would feel a tearing made to your very self. So I am. Everything that the creature does not do for me are tearings that I feel. More so, since the earth that sustains her is mine. The sun that illuminates her and warms her is mine. The water that she drinks, the food that she takes, are mine. Everything is mine. She lives at my expense, and while I give her everything, she, the beautiful statue, is not for me. What must my sorrow be, then, and the affront and the offense that this statue gives me? Think about it yourself, my daughter. Now, you must know that my will alone can give me back my statue, beautiful, just as I made it, because my will is the preserver of all our works, and the bearer of all our reflections, in such a way that the soul lives of our reflections, that if she loves, administer to her the perfection of our love. If she works, the perfection of our works. In sum, everything she does is perfect in her, and this perfection gives her so many tints of different beauties as to enamor the Maker who formed her. This is why I love so much that the Supreme Fiat be known, and form its kingdom in the midst of the human generations, to establish the order between Creator and creature, and to return to place our goods in common with her. And our will alone has this power. Without it, there cannot be much good. Nor can our statue return to us as beautiful as it came out of our creative hands. November 1st, 1926. What the Supreme Fiat does in each created thing, and the lessons it gives to creatures in order to come and reign in their midst. I was making my usual round in the whole creation, to be able to love and glorify as the divine Fiat itself loves and glorifies in all created things. But while I was doing this, I thought to myself, my sweet Jesus makes me make my round through the whole creation, as though to reach his will in all of its acts, so as to keep it company, to give him an I love you of mine, a thank you, an I adore you of mine, and to ask that his kingdom may come soon. But I do not know all that this divine volition does in each created thing. I would like to know it, so that my act may be one with its own. Now, while I was thinking of this, my always lovable Jesus, all goodness, came out from within my interior and told me, it is right that the little daughter of my will know what he from whom her origin came does. You must know that my eternal Fiat not only fills the whole creation and is life of each created thing, but keeps all of our qualities spread out in the whole creation. In fact, the creation was to serve as terrestrial paradise for the human family, and therefore it was to be the echo of the beatitudes and happinesses of heaven. If it did not contain the joys and the contentments of the celestial fatherland, how could it form the happiness of the terrestrial fatherland? More so, since one was the will, both that which beatified heaven and that which was to make the earth happy. Now, if you want to know what my will does in the heavens, in that azure that appears always firm and stretched out above the heads of all, there is not one point at which heavens cannot be seen. Both at night and at daytime, they remain always at their place. So our will keeps our eternity, our firmness that never changes, spread out. It remains always in its perfect balance, nor does it ever change because of any circumstance. And while it loves and glorifies our eternity, our unshakable being, it makes the earth happy and says to man, "Look, take the heavens as model, that are always stretched out above your head. Be always firm in good, just as I am, always stretched out from here in order to protect you, so that you too, like a second heaven populated with stars, that to your eyes seem so bound to the heavens that it can be said that the stars are daughters of the heavens, so that you too shall be firm in good, and the heaven of your soul shall be populated with stars, like many births from you, and daughters of yours." So, in making your round in the creation, when you arrive at the heavens, you too, united with our will, love and glorify our eternity, our unshakable being that never changes, and pray that it may render creatures firm and good, that they may be the reflection of the heavens, and may enjoy the happiness brought by a good that is continuous and never interrupted. Then, continuing to make your round in the space of creation, you shall arrive at the sun, a sphere that is closer to the earth than the heavens, in order to bring to creatures the source of terrestrial happiness, and the similes of the Beatitudes, and the flavors of the happiness of the celestial fatherland. Do you want to know, then, what my will does in the sun? It glorifies our endless light, our innumerable flavors. It loves and glorifies the infinity of our sweetnesses, the indescribable tints of our beauties. And with its heat, it echoes our immense love. Oh, how the sun sings our praises, and loves and glorifies our divine being. Just as our divinity, unveiled, beatifies the whole celestial fatherland with acts ever new, in the same way, the sun, faithful echo of its creator, celestial bearer of the supreme majesty, veiled by its light, in which my will dominates and reigns, brings terrestrial happiness to the earth. It brings its light and its heat. It brings sweetness and flavors, almost innumerable, to plants, to herbs, to fruits. It brings color and fragrance to the flowers, and so many different tints of beauty as to delight and embellish all nature. Oh, how the sun, or rather my will in the sun, through plants, fruits, and flowers, offers true terrestrial happiness to the human generations. And if they do not enjoy it fully, it is because they have moved away from that will that reigns in the sun, and the human will, placing itself against the divine, breaks its happiness. And my will, veiled in the light of the sun, while loving and singing the praises of our divine qualities from the height of its sphere, says to man, "In everything you do, be always light, just as I am, so that the light may convert you completely into heat, and you may become as one single flame of love for your Creator. Look at me. By being always light and heat, I possess such sweetness, so much so that I communicate it to the plants, and from the plants to you. You too, if you are always light and heat, shall possess the divine sweetness. You shall have no more bile and angers in your heart. You shall possess the flavors and the different tints of the beauties of the Supreme Being. You shall be sun like me, more so since God made me for you, and you were made for Him. Therefore, it is right that you be more sun than I. See, my daughter, how many things you have to do united with my will in that sphere of the sun. You have to sing the praises, love, and glorify our light, our love, our infinite sweetnesses, our innumerable flavors, and our incomprehensible beauty. And you have to impetrate for creatures all the divine qualities that the sun contains, so that in finding the divine qualities in their midst, my will may come to reign unveiled, with its full triumph, into the midst of the human generations. And now, my daughter, let us descend into the lower part of the earth. Let us go into the sea, in which immense masses of crystal clear waters are piled up, symbol of divine purity. These waters are always moving. They never stop. They are without voice, and they murmur. They are without life, yet so strong as to form waves so high that they overwhelm and shatter ships, people, and things, to then descend into their shore after having knocked down the things which they invested, peaceful, as if they had done nothing, continuing their usual murmuring. Oh, how my will in the sea sings the praises, loves and glorifies our power, our strength, our eternal motion that never stops. And if our justice forms its just roaring waves, such as to knock down cities and peoples, like peaceful sea after the storm, our peace is never disturbed. And my will, veiled by the waters of the sea, says to man, be pure like these crystal clear waters. But if you want to be pure, move always toward heaven. Otherwise you would putrefy, just as these waters so pure would putrefy if they did not always move. Let the murmuring of your prayer be continuous, if you want to be strong and powerful like me. If you want to knock down the strongest enemies and your rebellious will, that prevents me from unveiling myself and going out of this sea to come to reign in you and extend in you the peaceful sea of my grace. Is it possible that you want to remain below this sea that glorifies me so much? You too sing the praises, love and glorify our purity, our power, strength, and justice, united to my will that awaits you in the sea as its own daughter, as well as our eternal motion towards creatures in order to do good to them, and the continuous murmuring of our love through the created things, that while it murmurs love, wants the continuous requital of the murmuring of the continuous love of the creatures, and pray my will to give them the divine qualities it exercises in the sea, so that it may come and reign in the midst of those who now keep it rejected in the whole creation. So, if you want to know what my will does in all creation, make your round in it. And my Fiat, finding its daughter in all created things, shall unveil itself, and shall tell you what it does toward the divine majesty, and the call and the lessons it wants to give to creatures. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 20, Part 6. Fiat.